Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today will be my final episode of my podcast about forensic science. My name is Darian Booth, and if you are new here, this is a podcast where I reflect on what I've learned about forensic science, review famous crimes, and talk about current events. My previous episodes are currently up on my channel, so you can go check them out if you want. For today's final discussion, I will be talking about fingerprint analysis from Learning Module 6 of my inquiry and math and science class, and how fingerprint analysis can be helpful to identify an individual. Fingerprinting is the most cost-effective method of suspect identification. The fingers of a person contain small ridges which are nature's way of allowing one to grip objects. On the surface of your fingertips are raised lines called friction ridges. Along the top of these ridges are pores that secrete sweat, a mixture of salt, proteins, and water. When you touch something, you leave behind a print of the pattern of your fingertips. In one of my past assignments, I was tasked with analyzing a fingerprint that was collected from a crime scene and matching that fingerprint to one of 4 different samples collected. After examining the main fingerprint from the crime scene, I was able to label 5 ridge characteristics and other useful details. The 5 ridge characteristics that I labeled were ridge delta, ridge bifurcation, ridge enclosure, ridge ending, and ridge island. If you guys are wondering what each ridge characteristic is, the first ridge delta is a ridge pattern that splits in 3 directions. Ridge bifurcation is one ridge that splits to become 2 ridge lines. Ridge enclosure is a ridge that splits then comes back together. Ridge ending is a long ridge that comes to an end. And lastly, ridge island is a dot-like ridge by itself. Other details that I was able to notice were the overall whorl pattern of the fingerprint. Another detail that I saw was the distance between the center of the whorl and the base of the whorl pattern, which was about 1.8 centimeters. Now, when comparing the main fingerprint to the other 4 suspects, 2 of the suspects I eliminated due to them having a different overall pattern. Suspect 1 had an arch pattern and Suspect 4 had a loop pattern. Suspect 2 and 3 both match the whorl pattern that is seen from the fingerprint found at the crime scene. Looking closer, Suspect 2 does not match most of the characteristics and details from the main fingerprint. On the other hand, Suspect 3 has all matching ridge characteristics, and the most important ridge characteristic is the ridge enclosure, which was found in the middle of the whorl for only Suspect 3. Suspect 3 also shares a similar overall shape and a distance from the center to the base of the fingerprint. After completing this assignment, I was really shocked by how unique each fingerprint is and how these characteristics can be used to identify any individual. Now, after reflecting on what I learned from a previous assignment I completed, we will be looking at a famous crime where fingerprint analysis was used to identify the criminal. On September 19th, 1910, Clarence Hiller woke up to screams of his wife and daughter in their house in Chicago. When rushing to see what happened, Hiller heard 3 shots coming from upstairs where his wife was. After coming into contact with the intruder, both individuals fell down the stairs. Unfortunately, during that incident, Hiller was shot in the neck and passed away shortly after. The perpetrator, Thomas Jennings, was leaving the scene when he was stopped half a mile away, wearing a bloody torn coat and carrying a revolver. After Jennings was caught, investigators examined the scene and they noticed that the revolver contained cartridges that matched those found at the crime scene of Mr. Miller and residue from recently fired gunshots. More importantly, they found that Jennings left behind his fingerprint on freshly painted railing that he used to climb through the window. The police took pictures and saved the railing as evidence, which they would later use to positively identify Jennings. The print that was found on the railing was evaluated based on the fingerprint descriptions of arches, loops, and whorls. Furthermore, other prints found in Hiller's home were collected and compared using a special technique. From this comparison, the investigators found Similarities in characteristics between the prints. From the evidence collected at the scene, including the fingerprints and revolver that he possessed, Jennings was found guilty and was sentenced to death. This would be the first conviction using fingerprint evidence in a criminal trial in the United States. In addition, fingerprint evidence would be acknowledged as a reliable and solid way to connect an individual to the crime scene. If you would like to read more about this famous crime, the URL is on screen and also located in the description. Now we are going to look at a new article that talks about how fingerprint testing can reveal an individual that has used cocaine or any other drugs. The article starts off by talking about how cocaine is a powerful and addictive drug which was detected by urine or saliva tests, but now with an advancement in technology, fingerprints can also be used. A research team at the University of Surin used a new technology known as high resolution mass spectrometry, which can detect drugs and metabolite traces in sweat collected from fingerprints. With this new technology, investigators will be able to detect traces of cocaine on human skin even after somebody has washed their hands. During the research experiment, they gathered participants that used cocaine in the past 24 hours and collected their fingerprints after they all washed their hands. The test administered picks up on a chemical compound that the body excretes through the skin when a person digests cocaine. After testing all participants, the fingerprinting technique proved to be 95% accurate. Something really impressive about this technique is that it takes 2 minutes to produce results compared to long tests like saliva or blood or urine. This new method can be used in the future as a forensic tool to detect the presence of cocaine in fingerprints found in crime scenes, or be used by officers in cases of drug driving. Aside from detecting drugs, the research team found that they can test for other traces of medicines. A successful fingerprint drug screening system that uses lateral flow assay technology and fluorescent labeled antibodies to detect traces of specific drugs in sweat on the skin. This is just one of the ways fingerprint analysis has been improved so much that they can do more than just identify an individual. If you want to read more about this, there is a URL on screen and will be located in the description as well. Alright, everyone, looks like this is it for my final discussion on my forensic science podcast. I hope you enjoyed learning about fingerprint analysis through my previous assignments. Also, how a famous crime was solved by examining a fingerprint, and finally, how the world is changing and improving the detection of substances through fingerprints. Thank you all for listening to me on my journey through forensic science. I hope you enjoy your time and take care. Bye.